the culture was to just pass students through without them doing the work. And so I felt like I was part of a giant fraud. Like on some level, people can see how they're still excited by things that were treats when they were young. When I turned 49, there was a law that they had to send me a letter that advised me of my retirement benefits once I turned 50.
Right.
And I could say that that letter burned a hole in my pocket.
Influencer Insight shares the battles, stories, success of the models, influencers, and entrepreneurs as they find the balance of being influential leaders today while creating long-lasting impact for the future.
Good day, everybody. Welcome back to another session of Influencer Insights, where I have Dr. Loretta Breuning here from Oakland, California, joining me. She works at the Inner Mammal Institute, and she has a book on human behavior and how to understand happiness. And I think in our community as influencers, one of the key things we can do to make a bigger impact on the world is understanding happiness and how to stay in those modes whenever we're working with other people. So that's really great to have you on, Doctor, and we really appreciate your time today giving us. And just tell us a little bit about yourself as we get going here.
Sure. So I was always interested in why people were so unhappy, because when I was young, I was surrounded by a lot of unhappiness. Yeah. And I was like, what's everybody so upset about?
Right.
So I was very glad to discover academic psychology when I was older, and I thought, I'm going to just do everything by the book of social science, and then my life is going to work out perfect. Right. And as you can guess, it didn't work out that way. So right. I started having questions about academic psychology and lost my faith in it and started looking deeper. And in my efforts, I got interested in the animal brain. What turns on good feelings in animals. And I was amazed to learn that the chemicals that make us feel good are exactly the same in animals. And they're managed by brain structures that we have. And like when you see how animals kind of get very excited about certain things and you say, wow, that's exactly why humans are driving themselves crazy over certain things. So then I've been focusing my life on that since I figured it out.
Cool. Very cool. It's amazing how, nature's got all of these different pieces that we can study one side of it, and we'll learn a lot about ourselves and stuff, right? So
yes.
Tell us a little bit about your background and stuff, because you mentioned to me before we jumped on that you were a professor for 25 years and you've raised a family and grown up. And so what's the journey from, starting as a professor to moving to where you're at now?
Well, to tell you the truth, when I turned 49, there was a law that they had to send me a letter that advised me of my retirement benefits once I turned 50. Right. And I could say that that letter burned a hole in my pocket. And I thought, wow, I could just leave. So I was really unhappy with my teaching situation. I was teaching international management. Okay. And I loved the topic, but I was very uncomfortable about the academic environment, which to me appeared that the culture was to just pass students through without them doing the work. And so I felt like I was part of a giant fraud. I kept thinking, is it me? Am I imagining this? But then my own children gradually entered the education system. And I thought, well, I wouldn't like it if their teachers were just passing them through for no reason. And yet their teachers may be stuck in the same trap. Yeah. And I was just like, I just want to get out of here.
A little curious about that, because I've definitely probably observed that, not being in the academic world as much myself, but is that something that's changed over that time since you started as a professor, or is that something that's kind of just been more?
I think it's gotten much worse. I mean, the pressure on teachers to just pass anyone for any reason with any level of achievement or non-achievement has just gotten administrators, everyone has gone along with this. It's really unfortunate. And you can have parents who might pressure to get their kids passed through, but how many parents are pressuring for their kids to be held up to realistic standards, And to just, everyone argues about this, but I'll just give you a simple example.
Go for it.
If you go to a supermarket and pay cash, which is not very common, but you see that the person who is giving you the change cannot do simple arithmetic, and they're just going by what's on a screen, and they can't even make change for $20.
Yeah.
It shows you that there's a problem.
Yeah, that's right. Quite fundamental pieces of basic success in life, right? Is being able to do something like that. So yeah, absolutely. So that transition from being kind of frustrated with the system as it was or where it was going, you decided to branch out on your own kind of at the early retirement stages.
Yes. So then I had the challenge of what to do next. And while I had this challenge, I'm reading a lot of self-help books.
Cool.
And one thing is leading to another. And I read one little animal study and another little animal study. And I watch nature videos. And I see that, like, in the nature animal world, it's like common knowledge, certain things that are just not discussed at all in academic psychology.
Okay.
Which is the fact that animals are extremely competitive and they fight constantly over resources, food and mating opportunity. And any extra energy they have after they meet their needs, they put it into rising in the social hierarchy of their group. So every kind of mammal has a social hierarchy in their group. And this has been known for 100 years. And yet it's taboo to even talk about in the animal world. So the more and more I'm reading about this, and then I discovered the field of evolutionary psychology and evolutionary biology, which didn't even exist until after I graduated college. So I immersed myself more and more in that. And then I started writing books about it.
What was did you pick up one book that talked about the animal behavior thing, or was there one particular animal that you kind of liked that drew you into this? Or
well, as you know, chimpanzees are the ones that have gotten the most attention because they're supposed to be genetically most like humans. So
right.
I started with this book called Chimpanzee Politics.
Okay.
And yeah, it's like a perfect title. It sort of says everything.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that book was written almost 50 years ago, and the author of that book has recanted and now is saying the opposite. So 50 years ago, you could say the truth that animals had a lot of conflict and were very self-seeking and self-promoting. Okay. But now that author of that book and all the other primatology books are saying that peace and love is the natural state among animals. And this is, yep, you got it. So, but after I read that first book, I was like, wow, I was amazed. Like, why didn't I know this? So then from there, I read some more chimpanzee books. Then I read a gorilla book, bonobos. You may have heard about bonobos. Then I started looking at smaller brain, like monkeys. I read about monkeys. Then I looked at smaller brain, like pigs and cows and dogs. Like, they all have the same wolves. It's the same thing in all of them.
Interesting. And so just their reactions and stuff like that can be like, what's some of the behaviors that you would kind of commonly see between different animals?
So the bottom line is, if you don't find food, you don't eat. So the brain is designed to look for food, to get excited when it sees food. So that's what our brain is designed for, to seek, and then to get excited when you see something that meets a need. Okay. And then the good feeling stops because it has already done its job. The excitement gets you to go for it, and then the good feeling stops. So this is all perfectly natural. It's not like selfish to get excited about meeting your own needs. And it's not a disorder that the good feeling stops. So that's, again, like this huge chasm between academic psychology and what is like simple biology.
Have you noticed that, like in your studies with different animals and stuff like that, if an animal is searching and they find something and they're excited about the food, and does that change if that pattern gets interrupted?
What do you mean by interrupted?
Well, if somebody's excited and they're running for their food, but yet there's a threat from maybe it's a sheep running towards the grain and the wolf comes. Yeah,
good question. So threats always have higher priority than rewards, because a predator can kill you faster than hunger can kill you. So the brain is always taking in information about rewards and threats. And it's like, oh, there's a reward. I'm going to go for it, but I'm still open to information about threats. And then that's a bad feeling chemical. And then the brain prioritizes that. So if you imagine a nature video with a gazelle is eating the grass, but it's still looking around for predators. And that gets first priority.
Okay. And then, I guess when we transition this to people like I'm just thinking of my daughter, she's 21 months old or whatever. And we say, here, we got to go for a treat. And then she's all excited about the food and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the reality. But how does that progress through is there other emotions in life that builds on once we start to learn that behavior, or is it?
Hey, models. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope that you're enjoying the episode. It's Ben here. I just wanted to invite you to the Influencer and Model Support Group on Facebook, where we've got a great growing community of people looking to help, support, share tips and tricks on how to grow, become, and develop as a model. So go on Facebook, type in the search, Influencer and Model Support Group, and you'll find us. Click join, you'll be added in, and you're going to find a great community of people to support you in your journey.
Yes, exactly. So we are not hardwired at birth. Our brains wire from lived experience. So your daughter's idea of a treat is based on her experience with you. Another kid might hate that treat and like another treat.
Right.
The funny example of, you see the countries where kids eat insects and they think that's the biggest treat, because that's the protein that's available to them. So anyway, each of us learns from good feelings and bad feelings. So you could think that the chemicals are like paving on your neural pathways and they encourage connections. And then the next time you hear anything related to like that treat, that you're like, wow, I'm excited. And that releases your energy and you're willing to invest effort in that. So whatever your daughter thinks of as a treat, like on some level, people can see how they're still excited by things that were treats when they were young.
Sure.
However, then we still have to motivate ourselves for other things. So we build, it's like layers, and it's almost like a highway system where there are like the main highway system of your brain, but then lots of other roads that get added on.
Okay.
But the biggest treat, so also our neuroplasticity peaks before age 8. So that's the biggest highway system. Oh. But then in our adolescence, we have another big period of neuroplasticity. Okay. And that's why most people can remember like the treats of their adolescence, is because that's more accessible. And social rewards become important as soon as your basic physical needs are met. So even for a little toddler, I was just talking about this in another meeting, getting someone else to get up and get you the treat is as important to them as the treat itself. Oh. And you can see how in the teen years, like having social influence is important. And then whatever worked when you were young in getting other people's respect, that wired you, and that's how you try to get influence today.
Wow. Okay. So when it's kind of that building piece of understanding, I guess if we understood that as kids, how we could develop that would be, you'd be like a superpower, right? But so basically anybody could go backwards in their life and kind of look back at the way they respond now and probably find a pattern all the way through of what they developed, right? So
exactly. And that's the subject of all of my books.
Okay. Cool. So how do we transition that to, somebody's in a certain place in their life and they're like, hey, I want to find more happiness, or a lot of the people listening to this are thinking confidence, and how do I put myself out there more? How can we backtrack that to improve that area of our life?
Sure. So I always say the first step is self-acceptance, because what I'm saying is hard to accept. That many people say, oh, I don't care about that. I just want to serve others. I just want to save the world. And it's so taboo to acknowledge these feelings in yourself that many people ignore them. And then the verbal part of our brain comes up with another explanation. And we often then we see that other people want to influence you, but you don't see that you want to influence them. So then you feel like a victim and all that. So the first step is self-acceptance, and that requires reading a lot of monkey books, watching a lot of monkey videos, and I explain it in all of my books, So then the next step, so finding the old pathways in yourself, as you said, like everyone can go back and find, like, how did I learn to seek social power when I was young?
Right.
What worked, what failed? Because whatever failed, like I said, threats are a higher priority in your brain than rewards. So you can say, oh my God, I can't do that.
Right.
So finally is to know that we can build new pathways in our brain in adulthood, but it takes tremendous amount of repetition. And in order to do that, first you have to design the new circuit that you want and say, okay, what is another way that I'm going to enjoy my own power and have a sense of my own power that feels safe and appropriate in my world today. And then I have to repeat it a lot. But repeating it just in empty words doesn't work, because you have to actually believe it.
Yes.
But ironically, if you make like a little tiny, realistic moment for yourself, and then give yourself a treat after that, the treat trains your brain in the same way that dogs are trained to do tricks.
What are some of the craziest treats that people have used to kind of spark that as an adult, that change or that pattern shift?
Well, the crazy ones, of course, is all of the bad habits that people have, that they don't realize that these are really the treats that they used in their past. So,
really?
For example, yeah. So if you were a teenager, and to describe why teenagers are unhappy, if you watch these nature videos, you see that when a little monkey reaches adolescence, they have to leave the group they grew up in and find a new group because there'd be inbreeding would kill off the species otherwise. Right. So when a monkey leaves its group, it could be killed by a predator any instant. So it's desperate to find a new group. And it's that desperation that we all have in our adolescence, that you have to leave the group you grew up in and find a new group. But until you do, and of course, we don't really want to just be a herd follower in a new group, but it's that sense of, I need the protection of a group that is inherent in the mammal brain. So what do you do in your adolescence to pull you out of that desperate feeling? Right. Everyone can think of their life as like the first time someone hands you a beer or a cigarette, or a porn video or a video game, whatever it was, a whole pizza, a pint of ice cream, whatever it was, that distracts you from the bad feeling. And your mammal brain says, oh, this works. And that wires you to go for that. So that builds a big neural pathway. So the real challenge is to find a healthier alternative. Okay. Now, there's so many other unhealthy alternatives. And the simple example is when you feel like the weak little monkey and the other monkeys around you are stealing your bananas, and you want to feel like you're the stronger monkey. Yeah. So people go into these unrealistic thought loops, which basically says, that monkey's a jerk and I'm fabulous and I'm going to win in the end because I'm great and he's a jerk. Yeah. Well, that doesn't necessarily work if it's not based on realism. So my focus is on tiny moments that are real. And I use as an example of that, if I'm in a situation and I'm uncomfortable and I look at someone and they look at me and we smile and make eye contact and I think, oh, they get what I'm saying. Yeah. And that feels so good. So it's like little moments often that build the positive expectations. Sure.
A lot of that would come down to having a pretty deep feeling or understanding of self-awareness, though, probably, right? Because you'd miss the little details, I guess, that make you move in that direction, though, too, right? So
yeah. So the self-awareness is understanding that this is how all mammals think. And it's not just you, it's like everyone else is in the same situation.
Right. That's pretty well a personality. It's a trait of mammals in general. Like there's people, perception, environments where they come from that change that at all, or is it?
So everyone has it, but everyone learns to express it in different ways depending on their own early experience.
Okay.
And there's a variety of these impulses. So I talk about dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. So dopamine is the excitement that I'm about to get something that meets my needs.
Right.
Oxytocin is the feeling of having social support and protection from others. And serotonin is the feeling of having strength, that I'm stronger than the mammal next to me.
Right.
So we want all of them, and they only turn on in short spurts, and that feels great, and then they turn off. So that's why we're trying again and again and again to stimulate them.
Okay, cool. The more we understand our own self-awareness, what makes that tick, the more we can bring those things to the surface a lot, right? So cool.
Yes, exactly. And bring them to the surface in our verbal brain, but you can't necessarily bring it to the surface with other people because, you know, they have been indoctrinated to say, oh, I don't think that way.
Yeah. And sometimes it's probably a sensitivity issue, insecurity as well, right? So
yeah, because we're told that it's wrong to either to want to be in the position of social dominance. It's wrong to want rewards. It's wrong to want protection from others. So what everyone, though, thinks it's wrong in this situation where they got in trouble for it, but then they want it in this other way that worked when they were young. So that's why everyone has to untangle all of these pathways.
That's kind of an odd thing because it pretty much guarantees we're going to limit our potential, right? If we've got this kind of programming that's happened all the way along that says that, you know, you can't reach out, you can't be celebrated, you can't celebrate yourself, I guess, put it that way, right? I think
but then there's the other side of it, which is the toddler inside me wants to be celebrated every minute. The toddler inside me wants to reach out every minute.
Right.
So that is also an unrealistic expectation that's going to get disappointed. And then you feel like disappointed all the time.
Right.
So the way I always say it is our brain naturally wants to be special, but I have to live in a world where 8 billion other people want to be special as much as I do.
Right.
That's the challenge.
Right. So there's probably a little bit of, you know, thinking of raising my daughter right now, like probably a little bit of a balance to find in that, right? Where it's okay to be celebrated because you are special, but also to remember that the world is not always going to see that the way daddy does, right? You know, so. Yes.
And unfortunately, like if daddy makes somebody too special, then that makes it harder for them to deal with the reality of life. You know?
Right. We don't see anybody in society like that at all, I don't think, right?
So there's no easy answer. That's the thing.
No.
Like so many people think, oh, well, if we only did this or this, then we would. No, there's no easy balance because both extremes are hard.
Right.
And yet we naturally want them.
Yes. Yeah. Trying to find what fits where you're at, who you are, and how you can coexist with other people too, right? Given what they need.
And we all have a limited amount of energy. So we're always trying to decide, should I invest my energy in being special in this way or in that way?
Right. No, that's interesting. Are there like general habits that people maybe you've studied or you've seen that really do help kind of bring someone's awareness or develop those, find that balance maybe a little bit? Or
so the title of my introductory book is Habits of a Happy Brain, Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and Endorphin Levels. So I have to confess that the publisher gave the book this title.
Okay.
So it does suggest that there are specific habits, and that's what people are used to because they're always given like this little checklist of, but it's not that at all. So the idea is you already have habits. You need to become aware of your old habits. You need to understand your power to build new habits. You need to create your new habits consciously. But I don't tell anyone any specific habits because you have to build them on top of like the foundation of the big neural pathways you already have. Otherwise, you're just not going to succeed. The only thing I could say is that everyone, like the one habit everyone needs is like, when I feel bad, in that one moment when I feel bad, so I'm making a decision, where do I put my energy? I were a gazelle and I smell a predator. So the natural thing is to look like, where is the predator? Because that's how the gazelle saves itself. But if I do that, like I'm going to spend my whole life looking for predators and I'm going to find them and then I'm going to feel threatened all the time. So what do people do in that moment when they first feel threatened? That's when they tend to go into their, you could call it a comfort habit, which I call it a distractor, because if you distract yourself from thinking about the lion, then it helps you feel less threatened. But now you're just thinking about opening a bottle of wine or buying a candy bar or playing another video game or whatever the thing is.
Yep.
So it's to become aware of that distractor habit and then create a new distractor habit that's healthier than the old one, but it has to be something that works for you.
Interesting. Do you have, and not to get too personal, but there's some things in your life that you've tried and succeeded in making different distractor habits yourself? Or?
Yeah, good question. So, depending on like how much energy I have, like at the end of the day, you know, if you're like feel bad about something, it's like you have no positive energy to hardly do anything and you just want to pass out or something.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't really invest in something positive, you're going to just go with something negative. So one of my perfect veg out thing is I watch a movie in a foreign language. And I have found that by looking at the subtitles and listening to the words that it takes 100% of my attention.
Would have to.
And then I can't think about anything negative, you know?
Oh.
Yeah. So that really works for me. And then during the day, like if I'm having a bad day, I'll watch that for like 15 minutes and then go back to work and then watch it for 15 minutes. So that's my effective habit. And it takes a bunch of effort to find like the right movies and have them ready. So in a bad moment, I don't want to watch a movie of people shooting each other or dying of cancer. And I have languages that I've studied. So I really like hear every word in the other language. And that really, distracts me.
Resonates. Well, movie night with Dr. Loretta is on a different level there. So yeah, that's cool.
And my other thing is baking cookies.
Well, that sounds exciting.
But if you are just baking cookies, your mind is free, and then you just think about the thing that's bothering you. So you have to keep your mind and your body busy. And so I have audiobooks that I listen to, but again, I have like the audiobook that's a little more challenging for when I'm in a good mood, and the one that's less challenging for when I'm in a bad mood.
Right. Cool. That's a great idea because I think a lot of people do those kind of things, right? They've got their comfort zone or the fun thing that they like to do, but that's only taking part of your focus, right? So movies, same thing. If you can focus on the language and the subtitles, I mean, that's okay. No, I'm going to try some of that because that sounds like some good way to move a person out of that. So how have you seen it in other people's lives? Do you worked with other people at all, or do you teach this and hope that they catch on to it? Or
so I'm not a clinician. I mostly don't work one-to-one, although I do have individual coaching sessions available, but like just one. So a lot of people write to me and tell me this has completely changed their lives. Of the people who write to me, which may not be like the fully random sample of the most troubled people or whatever, so many of them say that just the awareness solved the problem. Like just saying, oh, that's just an old neural pathway. It's not reality.
Right.
And I'm creating that unpleasantness in my own brain, and I can just shift on something else. And then hobbies are really the good solution.
Okay. I think a lot of people, my community, there's modeling people, there's social media influencers, photographers, all those kind of things that really hang out, and some entrepreneur people in between all that. But those are great things to be doing because you're being creative, you're building your mindset and sorting some things out. But taking this, I think, one step further in case of how do I do the photography? Well, staying focused on out of the negatives of life and that sort of thing as well. So playing music and going on a shoot, I think would be a great idea, that kind of thing, right? So it distracts all axes of your brain. So
yeah. And a huge one in all of this is anticipating criticism. So while you're doing this creative activity that you love, but you're anticipating the criticism that you got in the past, and you go there so quickly all the time, and it's going to constantly happen because it's a real physical pathway in your brain. So you have to keep saying, I am creating this. These are not real people who are criticizing me. Right. I have created this, and then I have released a chemical that makes it feel bad. And you just have to keep reminding yourself of that again and again. And what I say, it's like a highway where you're building an exit ramp and you're getting off the negative highway and then building yourself a positive highway that says, what would be a positive reaction that a person might have to what I'm doing?
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's super helpful. I think people will really resonate with that. Well, Dr. Loretta's ambitions right now, you've launched a new book, or did I catch that, or is that
going to launch? So
good to know.
I have written the new book. I just happen to have it here. You see, it says not for resale. This is advanced copy, and I don't know if you're seeing it backwards or I'm seeing it backwards. Okay. Why you're unhappy. And why you're unhappy, biology versus politics. This takes everything further and goes to all the stuff that I didn't say in the other books because I was just working so hard to be positive. Sure. But this goes more into the negative reality around us and helps everyone feel their own power to manage it.
Is there any relation to the current world and the state we're in with some change and stuff as well, or is it?
Yes, but I am not focused on blaming society and changing society because, as you know, that's like an endless loop of, no, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault.
Blame game.
And that's a real way for people to spark their happy chemicals by feeling important, but doesn't really make the world any better and really doesn't make you happy in the long run. So that's why everyone is challenged to take responsibility for the world that they're creating in their brain and find their power to manage their own chemicals. But first, I explain why it's hard to do, because the medical world, the academic world, the therapy world, and the media world are all focused on this. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. And the medical world is like, oh, it's not your fault. It's a disorder. And so I explain that.
How to get past somebody else's fault all the time, right? So I found it really interesting. And when I started doing this podcast a year and a half ago, I was expecting people to be more, they wanted to share their story to offend anybody. It's what it is, but they wanted to share their story and they kind of wanted to have a pity party in my podcast. And that was kind of what I was expecting a little bit, but you're guest number 30 something, and everybody that are brought on, they kind of all have a very similar idea that if they've had success or they've had change in their life, it's because they said, I'm going to change it and I'm going to make this difference for me, right? And it's inspiring to me because it's like, that's what it takes, right? It's something you go inward and say, hey, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to stay in that place. So
yes. And what my new book shows is that place is where our brain naturally goes.
Right.
So you blame, you could blame your situation, but then if you see that everyone else went to that place, then you have to understand the natural operating system that we've inherited from monkeys and chimps and dogs and cats and, fish.
Great. And animals are fun. So that's a good place to kind of play with those emotions probably a little bit without making it so personal, right? So incredible. Are you on any book tours, or how do you get this thing out that people might find or follow or watch you along the way as you promote this? So
thank you. Well, this is my 8th book, and 8, yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. So writing books is like my drug, I guess. So that's why I keep saying it's very individual. Everyone has to find their own, things that they like, based on their own. Like I had early experiences that made books safer than people, so that's my wiring. And I'm not saying that other people should think that way. It's just very individual.
Works for you. Very cool.
Yeah. So book tours, physical book tours are not a thing anymore, podcast book tours are more of the thing. And
Sure.
I've already been on over 100 podcasts from like the prior books. So if we had to talk about, to challenge myself to do something new and different with the new book, what I'm planning to do, which is, scary, but
Good for you.
I normally don't get involved in like the nastiness of online discussions.
Don't blame you.
So so I completely ignore the chat. I just post my daily little blurb and then I don't look at it ever.
Perfect.
But I know that what I'm saying in this book is like the opposite of what everyone else is saying. So I'm going to give a try with like going in some of the nasty world and saying, you might think about it another way. And so that's what I'm going to try. But, I'm scared.
Sure. That's a big leap. Do
you think I should be scared? What do you think? I don't know. Come after me.
Internet is an interesting place. I think you've got the background, you've got the history and the credentials. I think you're welcome to say, and you should be saying what you feel is maybe wrong with people's judgments of themselves and how they're perceiving everything, right? So yeah, no, I think you're on the right track there. I applaud you.
Thank you.
It will be a bit of a journey.
When you say I have the credentials, so here's the thing. My credential is in international management. That's what I studied. And no one in the like official academic psychology, neuroscience world is saying what I'm saying. So, right. And they're like a mafia where they defend their turf.
Yeah, of course. Well, mafia is about to get broke apart, just saying. So
yeah, but people who fight in mafia wars get injured.
It can be painful, yeah, for sure. But I think you're on the right track with what you're saying, and I think the world needs that other opinion. I think that's kind of the shame of where we're at, is that you're not allowed to have another opinion, and and you certainly are. So thank you for pursuing that work. So
thank you.
But how do people follow you? Like, are you on social media and that kind of thing as well, or?
Well, I have a website. I have a website, innermammalinstitute.org. Innermammalinstitute.org. So if you opt in at my website, you get a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart. And that means one email a day for 5 days on each of the 5 chemicals that I teach about, 4 happy chemicals and 1 unhappy chemical.
Nice.
And then you'll get all of the newsletter about all of my other speaking and new resources that I create for free.
Okay.
And it also has links to my social, and I have a lot of videos, and whatever format people like information in, I have it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's really exciting. One thing I like to throw at the end, and generally we hang out with people that are on social media a lot, so I always ask if your Instagram or Facebook or whatever blows up to like more followers than you can count, and you had the opportunity to share like one big message, what would be something that you tell those people?
So I always end up with the topic of social comparison, because it's such a tricky one for our verbal brain and our nonverbal brain to work together. Yes. So animals are constantly making social comparisons, because if a monkey grabs for a banana near a stronger monkey, it's going to get bitten. And you could see on nature videos, they even like the bigger monkey will stick its hand in the smaller monkey's mouth and grab the food literally out of its mouth.
Wow.
So the little monkey says, whoa, I don't want that to happen to me again. So I'm going to constantly compare myself to others. And if I feel weaker, this threat chemical is released. But when I feel stronger, then I'm going to go for the banana.
Right.
So it's this feeling stronger, which is actually serotonin, as much as that's not what we hear from the medical world. Sure. So that's what we're always looking for. And we're not meant to have it every minute. It's only designed for that little moment when it's safe to go for the banana. But we're making social comparisons every minute. And we really have to notice that we're creating that whole drama ourselves, so that we free ourselves from thinking that other people have forced that drama on us.
Right. Wonderful. Yeah, that's a great message. And yeah, again, something the world needs to hear over and over again. So thank you for writing and sharing about that, Dr. Loretta. So
Thank you.
cool. Well, appreciate you being on today, and said we keep it to a certain time, so we have, and I look forward to seeing and watching and hearing more from your book and your studies down the road. So
Great. Thank you.
Hey there, really appreciate you joining the Influencer Insights podcast today. If you've enjoyed this episode, I just ask that you share it with a friend and give the video a like or the podcast rating, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite other player anywhere else. That really helps us share the message and grow this community as well. So thanks for that. Take care. Great.